Aang, I rented the drawbridge control room before dawn. What the river made us admit. I didn't rent the drawbridge control room because I like machines. I rented it because rivers don't care about our stories, and I wanted a room where the water would ignore us while we decided who we were. If you help a city mechanic crawl under a stuck gear house in February with only a headlamp and stubbornness, he'll remember. I had. So when I texted Marco just before midnight, he called back with the voice of a man who measures time by tides and schedules. "You can have the tower until the 5 a.m. test lift," he said. "Blue work lights only. Don't touch the dog clutches. And listen to me, no trials after 2. He laughed like he'd learned that rule the hard way, and told me where he'd hidden the key in the fuse cabinet. At 11:38 p.m., my phone delivered the sentence my marriage can type blindfolded. Loadout ran late. Quick debrief turned into a drink. Might crash at the office. Don't wait up. Kara doesn't lie. She arranges rooms until they stop scaring people. She can turn 20 volunteers into choreography and make a donor apologize to his own conscience. For a year we've been excellent at mercy and thrifty with appetite. Then the operations lead arrived with gaffer tape in his tote and competence in his bones. His name is Blake. He stands exactly one respectful step from married women, which is a public service in daylight and a rumor in the bones after midnight. The control room sits above the roadway like a glass-fronted pulpit. Inside, it's a museum of switches, big levers that lock the span, metal buttons the color of older decisions, gauges and dials that never learned how to lie. The river slid beneath, black, indifferent, patient. I set 2 paper cups of coffee on the console and listened to the low, polite growl of power waiting for instructions. The blue work lights made every surface honest. They came up the metal stairs at 12:05. Kara first, hair pinned in the shape competence requires, coat swung over one shoulder like a confession she wasn't quite ready to make. Blake behind her, sleeves shoved, toed at his hip, eyes doing the perimeter math that keeps other people's nights from becoming stories. He saw me first. Men who carry after midnight always do. He stopped at the threshold, palms visible, a respectful step back from the levers. "A bridge," Kara said, smiling with half her mouth. "That's very you." "It's the only room I could think of where weight commits," I said. "Say it where the river can hear." Blake glanced at the lockout tag on the big lever like it had opinions. "Need me?" he asked her, not me. "I need you exactly there," she said, pointing to a strip of anti-slip tape just inside the door. "If I want less distance, I'll use your name." He obeyed. Good men do. It makes them useful and impossible to enjoy hatting. "Say it," I told Kara, softly so the machinery wouldn't think we were asking it to participate. "In an elevator," she said, because fate is lazy and never hires new writers. 2 weeks ago, between floors and nouns, I kissed him, quick, mint, rehearsal. He stepped back. He said my name like a lock. I was furious that he was the adult. I was relieved that he was. Tonight I nearly followed the part of me that likes doors. I didn't. I came here. "Do you want me to hit him?" I asked, and even hearing the sentence made something in me put its weapons down. "I want you to choose me," she said. "Not rescue, appetite." We stood in the unflattering blue. The river kept its own counsel. I moved to her with the slow, practiced respect of a person approaching a skittish animal that also knows your name. I put my hand at the back of her neck and pressed my thumb into the small notch I keep for emergencies that ought to be pleasures. Her eyes closed like a vote cast aloud. I kissed her, jurisdiction, not apology. She answered like a woman who had been a plan all day and needed to be a person for 4 uninterrupted minutes. My other hand slid along her ribs to her waist where the elastic stated the law. I stopped. Limits are the only furniture I trust around water. She took my lower lip between her teeth, brief, decisive, then laughed into my cheek, the laugh that gets me through the January versions of our life. "Do you still want to hit him?" she asked, not turning toward Blake, who had started reading the laminated procedure on the wall with devout attention. "I want to thank him for stepping back," I said, "and I want to owe him nothing else." "That's a budget," she said. "We can live in it." We stood at the console with our coffees and watched a tug push a string of barges upriver like the world had decided to be patient on purpose. Kara set her palm on the glass and let the cold make a halo around her hand. "Tell me the worst thing you almost did," she said. "I almost weaponized proof," I said. "Screenshots, timestamps. I almost turned our house into a courtroom because winning is easier than choosing. I drove to a motel with orange doors and a key I never asked for. I laughed myself home in the parking lot because even my worst ideas prefer daylight." "I almost sent you a picture," she said. "I almost mistook evidence for love. I went to a lobby instead. I drank water until I remembered you don't hire me to be interesting only when I'm endangered." Blake cleared his throat in the polite key that keeps vans loaded and reputations survivable. "Loadin' at 9, he said to the floor. "We need 4 backs and 0 speeches." He looked at the big lever the way a believer looks at an altar and did not move from his tape. I flipped a guarded switch and the little annunciator panel tested its bulbs. Amber winked like an old sermon. The draw span under us exhaled a steel sigh the river didn't bother listening to. "Do something foolish," Kara said, "but survivable." I took a grease pencil from my pocket, the kind mechanics write dates with on housings, and wrote small at the bottom edge of the console where fingertips wear the paint, "Choose before currents." She watched, then turned her wrist up to the blue light and wrote in tiny reverse for the mirror later, "Appetite, not theater." I kissed the ink dry and the river politely failed to notice. We didn't undress. We kept our lives. We made heat that could walk down the stairs without borrowing grace. The machinery hummed like a witness content to be ignored. She told me other truths I didn't earn and she didn't owe. The kiss was curiosity wearing courage's jacket. The stopping was the only part that worked in daylight. Tonight's almost felt like an elevator practicing her name. I told her the thing I don't like to say out loud. That I love the sound tape makes when it's pulled from a finished box. That I count steps when I'm scared. That I'm tired of being good and ready to be generous. A cold breeze knifed through the louvers and the room shook once, a truck hitting a seam in the deck. We both turned to the window by reflex and watched taillights smudge into their own red arguments. "You brought me to a place that lifts and locks," Kara said. "That's either very poetic or very you." "Both," I said. "I want to be the kind of weight you can commit." She smiled in a way that makes rooms turn down their volume. I pressed my mouth to the place below her ear where sentences look for courage. She made a sound that tuned my ribs to pitch. I stopped because the blue light is a terrible liar, and I like who I am with the sun on my neck. We walked the length of the control room. She pointed at the labels like a docent giving a tour of our bad ideas. Dog clutch, span lock, navigation lights. "This one," she said, tapping the toggle marked manual mode, "is the one that wrecks people." "We keep it off," I said. "We use both hands on the things that move." Down the stair, the river slurred against the piers. Blake watched us not as a judge but as a man counting how much of a room belongs to the people inside it. "If I'm in the way," he said, "say so and I'll become a hallway." "You're a hallway," I said. "At 9 you're a van." He nodded once, a decent man's treaty with himself. Kara leaned against the console and pulled me in by the front of my shirt with 2 fingers. We kissed again, brief and deliberate, the kind that writes checks you actually plan to cash. She set her forehead to mine. "Invite me to your daylight," she said. "Stand next to me when the fluorescents are rude. Put your hand at the back of my neck when I make rooms behave. I don't want to rescue. I want a witness with wrists." "Yes," I said. "Invite me to your appetite when the city is watching. Text me when the elevator asks for a vote. Let me carry the stupid end of whatever needs lifting." We smiled at how absurd it sounded and how much we meant it. The clock on the wall made a little click like a polite cough. "We have 20 minutes," I said. "Then let's waste them generously," she said. We stood at the window and watched the tug chase its own wake. She told me how her shoulder stiffens when a room needs her to be a system, how she loves my mouth in the bad lobby light when there's still tape on the floor, how she wants me to be undignified on purpose once a week so the rest of the time doesn't feel like an audition. I told her how I believe in the way she says "please" to a pallet jack like it has feelings, how I love the lemon smell of the community center mornings, how I've been keeping a list of places where the floor won't lie to us. "You're ridiculous," she said, full of affection. "I brought you to a bridge," I said. "I'm legally required to be ridiculous." At 12:44, the Annunciator did its polite wink, maintenance test in 20 minutes. I switched it off and let the room behave like we had never been there. We collected our cups. I wiped our fingerprints from the glass and deliberately left one smudge the size of a small country at the bottom of the pane, where a cleaning rag never reaches. On the stairs down, the metal sang our weight to itself. Blake kept the door like scenery that had earned a line. He didn't ask for absolution because he hadn't asked for anything at all. Outside the tower, the wind off the river had remembered its job. The city parked its cold on the back of my neck like a bureaucrat. "Walk me to the car," Kara said. Not because she needed me to, but because she wanted to spend 3 more minutes where the river could hear our shoes. We stood between 2 construction trucks with reflective tape pretending to be stars. She pressed 2 fingers to my wrist, daylight legal, and I felt something reliable settle in my chest like an instrument finding tune. We didn't make more promises than we could carry. We scheduled one, breakfast at the diner that forgives you for ordering pie at 8. At 9, the community center smelled like lemon spelling competence. Blake was already stacking tables with that modest inevitability that teaches gravity its manners. I carried the other end and let the sun own my neck. Kara moved through the room with a clipboard, and the mouth volunteers obey without punishing themselves. When she passed me, she tapped the ink on her wrist with 2 fingers, and the morning selected us without speeches. During break, I set a coffee by Blake's elbow. "Thank you," I said, "for being the adult in the elevator." "Thank you," he said, "for booking a room where the floor doesn't lie." He looked at the doorway like a man who respects exits for what they are, promises to leave without breaking anything you can't fix. We loaded the van without theater. Tape squealed, a case coughed, a list sighed with relief. Gravity, persuaded, cooperated for today. We didn't tell anyone about the bridge. We taped one of Marco's spare caution tags, "Lockout before lift," to the side of our fridge under the magnet shaped like the ridiculous boat we bought one summer we didn't ruin. Sometimes when the house auditions for courtroom, we walk to the river before dawn and stand on the pier as the span groans itself awake, and we let the machinery narrate the difference between lifting and locking without asking for metaphors. Sometimes she texts "come" and means "stand beside me," while I bend a room into competence and beauty. Sometimes I text "come" and mean "watch me be a body before I become a plan." Sometimes We invite a friend who has mistaken proof for love and bring them to the tower to watch the river refuse to notice them until they choose. We didn't stop admiring other people's competence. We did stop confusing it with permission. Heat is a temperature, not a verdict. Water is a witness that will not testify, it will simply keep moving. We eat before we try to win. We sleep when the clock loses its manners. We put our hands on each other in daylight like the sun still issues licenses. And when the gossiping part of the city asks whether we have anything to add, we say we rented a room that lifts and locks, kissed where levers wait for someone to mean it, wrote 3 small words where a mop can't find them, choose before currents, and left before 2 because that's the law now. No trials after 2. Return the key. Let the river decide what it remembers. We'll be down here on the bank, practicing appetite without theater and lifting what belongs to us together.